Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about The Boys on Amazon Prime.
Thank you so much for joining us again. We're very sorry about our impromptu break. We'll plan better next year. We'll have to remember that the week that our son is out of daycare, that it's a busy week, even though we have days off.
Well, it's busy because this is the opportune time to actually get stuff done around the house. And then we also had kind of an impromptu garage sale, so
yeah,
we kind of had to deal with that too.
Which those of you who follow us on Instagram may have seen our live video that invited you to come out and buy our stuff. Which, we had a few people come out and buy our stuff, but nobody really wanted to meet us or take our business cards for our podcast.
Are you really surprised by that?
No.
Okay.
Anyway, spoilers for the show because
lots of spoilers.
Yeah,
all of the spoilers.
All the spoilers because we're going to be talking about all of the show, and even just doing our summary and review is going to be spoilerific. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Okay, so you do as much as you want, and then I'll try to fill in the gaps.
Okay. Summary. Guy's girlfriend gets run over by a superhero, quite literally.
She gets exploded by the superhero.
Run through by the superhero. And then unwittingly gets involved in a quest for revenge against the supers in this super universe. How's that for summary?
Well, you missed some spots.
Yeah, I missed a lot of spots. I'm just trying to make it short.
Well, you don't have to always make it that short. He also falls in love. You forgot about that. You could have ended it that way.
He does fall in love. And that love teaches him a few things.
All right, my summary. So, superheroes are controlled by a corporation because this is America. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And the supers have faults just like any other person, but it's faults times 10 because they're superheroes. And a group of people decide that they're going to take matters into their own hands and teach the heroes a lesson.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a conspiracy.
And there's a conspiracy. There's always a conspiracy.
Going to throw that out there because that's kind of an important part.
That's what makes life interesting is the conspiracies. Review. I didn't like it as much as I liked Umbrella Academy. I feel like Umbrella Academy did this kind of the same themes better.
Well, you also like Umbrella Academy because there's time travel involved.
No, not just because of the time travel involved, but I think I'm probably because I was triggered by a few things in the show. There were a few times when I was just like, it's so cringy about my own past, especially that whole episode where they're at that evangelical conference thing, which was that was part of my life. That I've been to those things. I went to Promise Keepers with my dad, and it's.
Which is kind of ironic because the weekend that we watched this is a weekend where some friends of ours asked us if we were going to go to a Christian music festival. And we said no.
No. I've been to things like that, and no.
No.
But, yeah, it was good. It was entertaining. It did provide a very excellent story. There's plenty for us to go over. And I'm going to try to not go over the same things that I went over for the Umbrella Academy. That's why I brought it up, was because I feel like a lot of the same themes were in the Umbrella Academy. And I feel like both of them are kind of post-Marvel, post-superhero fatigue, kind of talking about the reality of superior humans.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I actually back up. Are you done with your review?
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
I would say that I actually like this better than the Umbrella Academy. because I feel like this, even though it involves superheroes, to me is a more realistic way of how supers might actually come to fruition.
Okay.
You know, it's not some magical alien who makes all of these people give birth at the same day.
The 48 or however many people were born on the same day.
Yeah. Anyway, so I really liked this. I do have to say it is very triggering. Like, there's sexual violence. There is just violence. There is, like, pretty much anything that you might... Oh, bestiality kind of is hinted at, too.
Yeah.
Death of children. Torture. So, like, if you are very sensitive...
Children being tested on. Babies
Yes.
being tested on.
If you're very sensitive, this is probably not the show for you. If you are willing to kind of sit through these things and get at the meat of the show, and it really does make you want to go into a deeper dive into how you feel about things, because they really don't make the characters black and white like a lot of superhero shows do.
Yeah, here's, I think, the best way to kind of equate it is it's very much in between seasons 1 and 2 of The Handmaid's Tale. Whereas The Handmaid's Tale season 2 was just, like, it was painful to watch, but you wanted to watch it. It was kind of like one of those train wreck things that you couldn't take your eyes away from, kind of thing. And it just tore you apart. Whereas season 1 was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is kind of like an allegory for what's going on right now, kind of thing. And so it was, The Boys is kind of in between, is both of those.
Yeah.
Like, there were moments for me that it was painful to watch. And, but it was still like, oh, that's an allegory for some of the things that are going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you like superheroes but kind of want something different, but also kind of want to get grossed out by things,
A little bit more
this might
serious
be...
than...
Yeah, it's very serious.
It takes itself a little bit more seriously than The Umbrella Academy does, but with still that tongue-in-cheek sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, really want to talk about kind of that lie of superiority, that there are people that are superior to other people. Now, I'm not talking about just the purely, like, some people are more talented than other people, because, yeah, duh. People are more talented than other people. And there's some people who, you know, like, it came naturally to them. And then there are some that strive every single day and practice extremely hard to get to the places that they're at. You know, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those who feel that they're inherently superior to other people.
Like certain people who feel like they're have the best words, for example.
Those who feel that because they were born with the certain color of skin, that they're superior than all others.
Yeah. As in that's a false sense of superiority.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing, is that so many of these senses of superiority are kind of a false sense of superiority. And I think this is something that the show kind of delves into a bit, especially on the front, using the front of the superhero genre. And there was an interview with the creator of the comic books and the television series, Garth Ennis, by the Los Angeles Times. It really talked to it. There's a quote from him that says, "The appeal for me is that I can write about life as I find it, rather than idealized fantasy figures that bear no relation to reality. The notion that the medium I work in is dominated and sadly defined by such a stupid genre is not one that feeds my sense of idealism. They've ruined comics, so there's no reason they can't ruin film and TV as well." Which I think tells you quite a bit about this show. It tells you quite a bit about where he's going with this, where, you know, like, he's wanting to really hit you. He's really talking about humanity and life as he sees it. And that's the wonderful thing about being a writer, is that you get to tell these stories to really show people how you view life. They get to see life and your world as it is. So, really, I wanted to take a few different views in this. I wanted to talk about Hughie and Starlight first. Starlight, Anna, is somebody that
Annie.
Annie, sorry. Not Anna. Sorry.
No, not Anna. Annie.
Annie.
And knowing all the Annas and the Annies that I know in my life, they'd be very sad that you got it mixed up.
I know. I apologize. Annie really resonated with me, primarily because, some of the same things that I talked about in the Umbrella Academy, but that this is something that I feel a lot of people who grew up in not just the evangelical Christianity, but also in Christianity as a whole. And I know we talked about this. This was one of my big questions to you was, did you feel like you had, like somebody had a plan laid out for your life? And this is something that, is constantly repeated, I think, recently because of the two Panic at the Disco songs, which are played on the radio quite a bit. In fact, they've become almost as popular as Panic at the Disco was in the early 2000s.
I have feelings about Panic at the Disco, but I'm not going to ruin it for you.
Well, okay. Anyway, I like the lyrics to these songs, especially because in High Hopes, or Had to Have High Hopes, whatever the name of the song is.
I think it's just High Hopes.
High Hopes. Is in the verse, he says, Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something greater, go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days, we wanted everything. Then we have over in Hey Look Ma, I Made It. He's talking about, his friends are happy for me, or they're honeysuckle phonies when they celebrate my medals, or they want to take my trophies. Some are loyal soldiers, while these other thorns are rosy. And if you never know who you can trust, then trust me, you'll be lonely. And I think this kind of encapsulates the way that Annie is, and what I've talked about previously is that, she had this plan set out for her life. In fact, she took it on full-heartedly in seeing herself as the savior, seeing herself as being that since she had powers, she had the responsibility to use those powers.
And to be a good role model. That's ultimately
Exactly.
like what she was focusing on, was being a good role model, which is why she has that conversation with Queen Maeve and kind of like it like breaks her heart.
Because it's selling out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's especially, and just to expound on what I talked about for Umbrella Academy, is that's kind of what it is for a lot of ministry professionals, is they kind of leave seminary, they leave Bible college, and they're like those fresh-faced, dewy-eyed idealists that go out there thinking, oh, I've got this burden of knowledge now that, I've got to go out, I've got to share that knowledge, I've got to be able to save anybody that I come in contact with, especially, those who are going to be in my congregation or my students or whatever ministry that you're going to be going into. Now, on the other hand, you have Hughie. You have those who take this kind of superiority thing in a way that, they admire those who are more talented. They admire the supers, but, it kind of makes them feel like they're nothing special themselves. So they never really strive or have ambitions for anything further until there's a catalyst that makes them take control of their lives.
So they feel like that they don't really have to do anything because there's already a bunch of people who they view are more talented than them and who can do better things than they can do.
Yeah. I think this is really interesting because of the romantic subplot between Hughie and Annie, primarily because of the one moment where Annie feels like she's being used, which she's correct, when they're at that conference. And primarily because Annie grew up in a very evangelical Christian, society, in this group that, pride is a sin, that, there's a difference between humility and self-confidence. That so any self-confidence is pride, and therefore is a sin. So, like, even if you're talented, that you shouldn't take pride in that talent, that it's God-given, that you shouldn't take any compliments, kind of thing, which gives a lot of people complexes, like Huey.
I was about to say, I just realized something about myself just now.
Not just yourself, but myself. It's part of my generalized anxiety disorder, and part of the imposter syndrome that I have is that I never feel confident about the things that I do because I feel like it's wrong. That was so ingrained in me that I feel like, I can't ever do anything right.
It's kind of like even just something simple like my baking. Like, I get compliments all the time on my baking, like my cookies and my cakes, but then I don't really feel like it, like I don't take it to heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just like, they're just saying that to be nice, when for all I know, they really do like my chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah. Or that, I am actually a good writer, but, who knows? So I really feel like this whole concept of superiority is, in a sense, a form of control, a form of power manipulation, where people use their power over other people because they're viewed as superior, especially when it comes to clergy or to preachers. People will automatically see them as superior, and so therefore they're able to use that to their advantage.
Ezekiel,
for example. I love that he was used in this show in the way that he was used, and because it's very much the way it is with people like Franklin Graham, like what's his face Jr., who runs Liberty University, like all of these evangelicals who are backing president despite his moral failings. Mm-hmm. That hey, they have power over people, and if they use that power to give somebody else more power, then that gives them more power, and it's just kind of this weird cycle. So, is this idea of superiority, is this really kind of running our society then, in a sense?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if superiority wasn't a factor, or people like wanting other people who they believe to be superior running the country, we wouldn't have Donald Trump in the White House right now. Because that was, like, his supporters, their main thing was, he is a superior businessman. Let's he's not.
Be honest, he wasn't. No.
Yeah. I mean, he bankrupted a casino. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to go into it, but basically, he's the cause of why his casinos failed in New Jersey. But anyway,
I still don't know how somebody can bankrupt a casino.
Oh, there's a podcast called... hold on, let me pull it up. I feel like, because this ties in with it, so you should listen to it. So it is called Spectacular Failures. The latest episode was actually on Trump's big gamble on Atlantic City, and it's about how he basically destroyed Atlantic City.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So listen to that if you want to.
Let them know we sent you.
But part of it goes into the fact that the reason why Atlantic City welcomed him, and why people were just kind of letting him do whatever the hell he wanted in Atlantic City, was because they did think he was somehow superior because he had money, which most of the money that he had was his dad's money, and his dad had to bail him out multiple times on multiple business adventures.
See, it's his name recognition. That's why he puts it on everything. It's his brand.
People are like, oh, he put his name up there, so he must know what he's doing. Which means nothing.
No, I mean I think it's quite evident it's gotten him to a place where his name alone is not going to win him any contests.
No, there's some buildings out there that have the Trump name on that he doesn't even own anymore.
Well, I'd be surprised if there was in season 2, there's going to be a fake superhero that is just banking on their name alone. Rumors about them. Which,
That might be a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, I can kind of see that.
Yeah. But I mean, that's real life, is that people do that. Mm-hmm. that people will capitalize on these things that, it doesn't grant them any superiority because they aren't. Here's the lie. The lie is that there are superior people. There aren't. Mm-hmm. We are all struggling with the same humanity. We are all gifted with the same bodies, brains, and we can use them in different ways. We can be talented in different ways. But the truth is, it doesn't make anybody else superior than anybody else. So does that idea of superiority, does that kind of put people in these places of servitude, like where they're like feel like Huey, like at the very beginning, that they shouldn't try. They shouldn't, be ambitious or whatever because there's superior. There's other people who are more gifted or more educated or more or whatever.
So I said this before when you read me the question initially. I don't think it's a servitude.
Okay.
I feel like, servitude is servitude. Like you're serving somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's more of a, like just being stagnant, which is different, because you're not really, you're not serving anybody. You're not serving yourself.
Yeah.
You're not really serving others because you're holding yourself back. If you really wanted to serve others, you would try to increase your talents and utilize what you have to the best of your abilities in order to serve others better. So I don't really think it's a servitude. But I do think that, like for me, for example, there has been times when I haven't put my name in the hat for certain like positions or promotions because I feel like, well, so-and-so has been here longer, so they deserve it more. Or so-and-so did this project, and so I'm not even going to try because they're probably going to get it over me. That kind of stuff.
Well, and if I were to bring in work into this, I would open up a whole other can of worms. And
that's why I kept it just general.
Yeah, I think that's a whole different podcast for another day. We'll have to talk about something else that we'll talk about work and my vulnerabilities when it comes to work. But I agree. I think that's also a way of power, is that some leaders will use that to their advantage, is to say, oh, I'm superior, therefore you must do this, or therefore you must, stay in the position that you're at. Oh, you've got to work another 6 months before you can, you can understand what you need to do to get to this next step, this next level.
Or it would be a detriment to the company if you went to another spot. Like when I was a hostess, I kept on wanting to be a waitress, but I was the only hostess.
Yeah.
And so anytime there was a waitress position open, they refused to give it to me because if they did that, they'd have to find a hostess. But I was a good hostess. So
yeah, and I bet you they didn't even just raise your pay.
Well,
either.
Technically, because I didn't get tips, I did get paid more of an hourly wage, but I didn't earn as much because I didn't get tips. Actually, I didn't get tips because the waitresses would tip me, but that's different.
Yeah.
It's a different story. Montana's weird when it comes to their tipping laws. Anyway.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know this, if you guys watch the show or not, but one of the biggest themes is revenge. I know. Surprise, surprise. I know, very hidden underneath all of the layers that was going on.
That's almost every single character has their own revenge plot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to focus on a few, some of the main ones. Obviously, and I'm also going to talk about like the problems with revenge. Mm-hmm. Because, just like kind of how the show likes to portray it, revenge isn't as great as people think it is.
No.
Like revenge usually has some kind of problems that are associated with it. For example, like the Butcher. I think part of his problem with his character, well, I'm not saying that he's a bad character, but I'm saying him as a person, yeah. Even though he's a character, one of his flaws is that he is a very hard line. Mm-hmm. Even though he's mostly going after the Homelander, he feels that all superheroes are bad and that he is going to go after Homelander and do anything that he can do, no matter what it is, to get his revenge on Homelander. Period. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if he's going to throw his friends under the bus. It doesn't matter if he's going to hurt, like, innocent lives. He doesn't care. He's going to go after his goal. Period.
Yeah.
And obviously, that has lots of problems associated with it.
Well, and I'll talk more about Huey here in just a second, but he abandons his quest at the end, which I think that's why I liked him as a character, is that he had a full character arc, that he learned something.
Well, like, barely, though.
Meh.
Like, I still think he's as, like, I don't feel like he is being made malleable. I still think he's very much a stick. And he's not Clay. You know, he's just a stick facing a different way now.
Well, we'll talk about that here in just a second.
Yeah, or maybe an arrow. He's more like a compass.
Okay.
There, where he's still straight, but he can still move, but he's not like Clay.
Okay.
Is that a better metaphor for you?
Okay. I understand the way you see it, but we'll talk about it in a minute.
Well, anyway, he puts others in the line of fire and has no problems putting even his friends in the line of fire. Mm-hmm. He really doesn't care. And then also, too, he, especially at the beginning and for most of the season, he really doesn't know the full story about what happened. He just blanket assumes, and he doesn't even really want to find out if there's other motives. Like, he has this set in his mind. This is what happened. Homelander killed his wife. He is pretty sure about that, and he's going to just go after him.
Yeah. I mean, the twists that are thrown in the last few episodes, like, they're not even a possibility to him.
Yeah, no, like, it would never occur to him that could be a possibility at all. Just because he's just so blinded. But I also think, too, that when you lose somebody significant in your life, that we do tend to put on rose-colored glasses and kind of forget if there was anything bad that happened. Like, we don't really know how Becca felt in the relationship.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know if she didn't feel like she loved him that much, or if in her view, they were having some problems. Because in his mind, because of what happened, he put his rose-colored glasses on, and, you know, life was perfect, the relationship was perfect, and she was just taken away from him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, that in itself are the problems with Butcher.
Well, that's like the same thing as at funerals. Nobody really wants to say how much of an ass somebody was in life.
Yep. That's not me, though. I'm like, I'm going to tell the truth about this person and what they were like to me. And some people call me insensitive, but I'm like, this is what happened.
Well, I mean, there's this, whole thing about not speaking ill of the dead, but yeah, and I get it.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that Butcher will regret some of the stuff that he's done now that he knows that his wife, spoiler, is alive?
No. I don't think so. I think that he needed a reason. You saw, like, one of the clips of the relationship beforehand, when they met Homelander, when he first met Homelander, that he didn't like supers at that point, and I think that he just needed a reason.
When he met Homelander, like, for the first time, like, at the party. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. I think that, like, I only think that he might regret it if somebody pushes him to do it. Like, if somebody, like, sits him down and says, hey, we got to talk about the shit you've done.
Yeah.
And, like, really tries to, like, have, like, a therapy session with him. I think only then will he regret it. But he seems to be the type of person that is just very, like I said, hard-lined.
Yeah.
He's just very hard-lined. He might move his compass to point in a different direction, but he's not malleable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, too, there's Huey. I'm going to try to keep this a little bit short because we're kind of running over a little bit. But
We're fine.
with him, he clearly is not a revenge type. You know, when he, like, at the beginning, when he was with Robin, like, nothing very special about him, but he didn't seem to be this hard person.
No.
You know, he seemed like a normal, average Joe, you know, that doesn't take life too seriously, and that's okay.
Well, he did have those revenge fantasies, but that was, you know, everybody has revenge fantasies. Everybody has those moments in the shower where they're replaying a conversation in their head, or...
Well, I'm talking about before Robin died.
Well, even then, you know, like, you could see that he was, like, trying to play out that whole conversation with his boss to ask for a raise.
Gotcha. But the point being, like, he's not, like, revenge is not his main is not his main driver in life.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at. That's not his main driver. And he really doesn't start thinking about the possibility of revenge being a real thing until the Butcher comes into his life. And so he kind of lets the Butcher plant these little seeds in his head because the Butcher is clearly using him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, very obvious.
Yeah.
He is using him. And then he also lets his grief take over as well, too. Or better yet, the Butcher is using Huey's grief as a catalyst to try to get him into this revenge plot with him.
Well, yeah, and that's a power play there, too. I mean, I could have just talked about power plays.
That's true.
But, like, that was a power play, was to use his grief to put himself in a place of power, to say, I'm an authority. You should listen to me. We're going to get justice.
Well, he lies to him about, like what his job is and that kind of stuff. So the Butcher definitely makes himself seem more grandiose than he really is, for sure.
Yeah.
But the difference is the Butcher knows he's lying. He doesn't really think he, you know, has this
superior.
authority.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a difference between him and other people.
Yeah.
That many of us know from Twitter. And then too with Huey, like he's one of those people, like growing up, he obviously idolized supers like many other people in this world did. Then this happened, and he's realizing that supers also are human and they definitely have human emotions and traits. They just happen to have a little extra spice to them in terms of, like, the superpowers. But then, like, when he's trying to, like, get on board with the Butcher and be like, yeah, all superheroes are bad. Supers are bad. Like, this whole world is just bad, bad, bad. He meets Starlight, and then he's like, well, I guess they're not bad. Like,
yeah.
you know, like, just like regular people, superheroes, there's good and there's bad, you know, and there's people in between. So that's the thing that I think is kind of holding Huey back on his full revenge plot, because he's like, yeah, Super killed my girlfriend, but now I have a new girlfriend and she's a super. So, like,
Yeah.
he has very mixed feelings about this. And that's another thing I liked about this show is you as a viewer get a lot of mixed feelings about things. The biggest person that you'll have mixed feelings about, I feel, is the Deep. And he is somebody that I've talked to with a friend of mine, because I have lots of mixed feelings about the Deep, because obviously he's a jackass because of what he did to Starlight. But, like, it's so weird because, like, karma is so, he definitely got what he deserved, but I am fully on board with the idea that no one, no matter who they are, should be sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
Like, period. Like, that's where I draw the line. I'm also very against the death penalty, too. So, like, I know people are going to be upset with this, but even if somebody murders multiple people, I don't feel like the death penalty is the place to go. Because I don't believe in what most people interpret an eye for an eye I don't think it should be literal.
Yeah.
In fact, an eye for an eye wasn't actually meant to be literal. An eye for an eye just really meant to be that the punishment should fit the crime and not that the punishment should be the crime that they committed.
Yeah, and see, with the death penalty, that's a very sticky subject to oversimplify it and to make it much more palatable, I think, for some people. Mm-hmm. So that I think it's much worse for somebody to live with what they did than to kill them.
Yeah.
That's like releasing them from it.
Not to mention that it's usually cheaper for us to keep them alive in prison. And then also, most people who are on death row, there's like statistically, people who are on death row have a pretty good chance of actually being innocent.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect. And then some people actually die before they actually are executed. So then there's all that wasted time there. So anyway, there's a lot of things that make me against it. So
I'm just oversimplifying it.
Yes,
so.
Very, yeah. But still, like with the Deep, again, he's a jackass, but he clearly had this weird connection with the dolphin, which kind of makes sense because, like, dolphins are supposed to be, like, pretty smart animals, and, like, they do have a very complex communication, like, between each other, which kind of signifies that they are more intelligent than what we might think that they are. But
even though there's this huge dark side to dolphins.
Yes. You guys can look it up yourself. I'm not going to bring it up in here, but yes, there's a very dark side to dolphins. But like, he obviously like cares for this dolphin more than what he probably should.
Yes.
Yes. But I mean, did the dolphin really have to die? Really? Did it really have to die?
And just that morbid, dark gallows humor in that with the slow-mo and...
Well, Seth Rogen, I think he's a producer. Yeah,
he's a producer on this.
So that would make sense.
It makes sense. It's just, why do we have to see it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, not even implied. It's there.
It's very much there. Yeah. Anyway, so it's like, it's just weird because, like, during that scene when he's in his hotel room in Sandusky, which is clearly the place where he loves, is Sandusky, Ohio. Like, that whole time, I'm just like, part of me is like, now he knows how it feels. And then another part of me is like, no, I don't like this. Like, this shouldn't be happening. Like, she shouldn't be doing this to him. Like, this is not right. But then still, I had that part of me, like, behind the scenes who was like, now he knows how it feels. And I just know that that's wrong.
Yeah.
I know that's wrong. And so that's why it's just complicated. And that's another reason why I like the show, because it makes you go into those uncomfortable aspects of yourself. Does that make sense?
And it moves you to...
Well, now I'm thinking about it, right?
Yeah. It moves you to try to be a better person. And that's the whole point of us doing this show is that that's what story's for.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your point of view, do you think that all of the karma that he experienced was justified?
Yeah. I'm with you on that. It's complicated. On one hand, yes, it's justified, but it's not exactly justice. Mm-hmm. It's...
Like, I don't think that Starlight would want somebody to...
Yeah.
Like, sexually assault him as, like, payback.
No. And I don't think the person who did it saw it as payback either.
No, I just think
has some weird fetishes.
Has issues, yeah.
Yeah.
Not even fetishes. She has some issues.
Yeah. All right, we need to move on.
Yes, we do. Okay.
All right, so let's get to the Saints then. I'll do my Saint of the the series season. Saint Huey. I think Huey was bent on revenge, and I think that it was his PTSD that was driving that. Essentially, with seeing Robin,
having Robin's body like splattered on him.
On him, yeah, holding her hands.
Yes.
And but I also feel like he saw the dark side of revenge, especially in that moment where A-Train was having that heart attack, when he was like, oh no, he's human. He's like vulnerable like the rest of us. And I think that's, that was another big piece that I wanted to think about, talking about, was vulnerability, and especially for men. But that was just something else that I thought about this week. Another NPR podcast talked about how adult men can make friends. A lot of it has to do with being vulnerable. Anyway, that was, I think, his second miracle, was being vulnerable and allowing Annie into his life in a way that she changed his life in a way. And it takes vulnerability to do that. So the first miracle was putting revenge aside, and the second miracle was being vulnerable for Annie to come into his life.
Okay. For me, I chose Frenchie. And I like how when I told you I was going to do Frenchie, you were like, really?
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I chose him, because, we first meet him, and it seems pretty obvious that he is a criminal. Like, full stop. Like, he is a criminal, and he likes explosives.
Yeah.
But throughout the series, we meet a super who clearly is being held against her will. She is a prisoner, and she needs help. And so he sees the humanity in her, sees her struggling, and, like, almost does a complete character change. And, well, maybe not maybe, I don't know. To me, it seemed like a character change. Like, he takes it not necessarily her on as a project, but, like, as her protector. Like, even though, like, she could, like, kick anybody's butt. But, like, like, he stood up and was like, no, like, we got to save her. Like, we have to make sure she's okay. Like, we got to protect her. And that, I don't know, I just the fact that, I mean, the whole point of the team is to go after supers, and here he is protecting a super. Yeah. It's kind of a big deal. And
even going to a super to help her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. So, so I would like to designate him a saint.
Okay.
If you will let me.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so let us know who you think was the saint of this season. Let us know if there was anything that we didn't talk about that stood out to you guys. And, as always, just come and join the conversation. So let them know how they can do that.
So you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Patron Saints of Pop Culture. You can also find us still on Twitter, kind of, at The Honest Faith. And then our website is
www.patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
Thank you, because I can never get it right.
I don't think you need to put the www in anymore. I think I fixed that.
Good, because that part was silly.
Yeah. So with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.
yourself a favor.